Richard Tice, who's founder and co-chairman of Leave Means Leave. Richard Tice, I assume you don't agree.
Good evening, Michael. Well, of course not. I mean, the reality is we have had the greatest display of democracy this country's ever seen. 17.4 million people voted to leave. We were told by the government in their £9 million brochure that the government would carry out the will of the people. We were told that it was a once-in-a-generation decision. 3 times the brochure referred to that. And 5 times we were clearly told that we would no longer retain membership of the single market. We expect that the government will carry out the wishes of the people. We don't expect that people will say it was advisory and we need a second referendum.
Fine. Matthew Turner?
I've been reviewing the Brexit campaign pitch, and a strong theme of that campaign was that the UK would negotiate from a position of strength, that the process would be pretty straightforward, and that the EU nations would be picked off one by one as they put their economic interests above the political integrity of the European Union. That's not how things have worked out, is it?
And there we have an interesting process of agreement, because there is a level of incompetence in terms of the way the government is going about this process, which we would agree with. We at Leave Means Leave have made it crystal clear from day one that you need to be prepared to walk away. We came up with the slogan, "No deal is better than a bad deal," the Prime Minister used in the Lancaster House speech, and she should have stuck to that. They should have set out a clear timetable. They should have set out a clear alternative plan, which is basically a WTO plan. And if they'd set that out early, then we wouldn't be in the position we are in now. So there's a combination of people to blame for that. One is the politicians, the other is the civil service.
I get that, and that's, I want to get to the nub of this. So that view, that isn't the only view of Leavers, is it? That's a view of one group of Leavers. There are other Leavers who feel differently, aren't there?
I think amongst those...
Well, they clearly are, because they're in the House of Commons. You know.
Yeah, but most Brexiteer Tory MPs are pretty much of our view. So we're the biggest group. We have the most supporters amongst Tory MPs.
What I'm getting to, which I think you'll probably agree with, is that this is likely to end up in a situation where we either take what the EU forces on us, or we have a hard exit. That's really what we're moving towards, isn't it? Isn't it?
I think that's right.
Do you think that everybody who voted in that referendum knew they would end up with the choice between taking the EU rules?
They gave the government an instruction. They expected the government to carry it out competently. There's frankly a serious question mark about that. But let's be very clear. The people of the country, the mood of the country is, please, can we get on with it? Can we leave and focus on some other more important domestic issues?
So given that you didn't predict that the government would negotiate incompetently, because what you did actually predict was that the EU would be kind of gasping to do any deal at all.
I don't think anybody said it.
They did. I just even read German car manufacturers would be queuing up to do a deal with us on day one. So
they still are.
Given that hasn't really been how it worked out, do you think it's appropriate that when people say that things are moving, things are changing, this needs to be debated, that Leavers use phrases like collaborator, enemy of the people, traitor, about anybody who says things might be changing? Maybe we need to discuss this again.
Well, we don't use those expressions. I haven't heard many people use those expressions.
Well, we know about enemies of the people. We all know about that expression. That was a headline for a newspaper because judges questioned the process.
Newspapers can write headlines.
So you agree that was wrong?
Well, that was nothing that we came up with. You know, we just used the simple words. It's a should be conducted in a sensible, business-like way. And business people would have conducted this in a totally different way to that which has transpired.
Maybe they would. And look, the Remainders can be hysterical as well. But are you saying that you don't ever think that the Leave campaign sometimes reacts in an aggressive and unpleasant way towards people who say, we don't think this question is fully closed?
Well, look, it is the nature of political debate that occasionally it gets pretty brutal, it gets pretty tough, and sometimes it gets aggressive. That is the nature of debate today. And I don't have an issue with that. As a business person, it's been a fascinating learning experience. We can all decide whether it's too brutal or not. But the reality is this is a really important issue for the country, and we've got to get on with it.
I get that. Now, if next spring, when it becomes absolutely clear, as you've agreed it probably will, that the choice is between taking the rules the EU imposes on us or a hard exit with the risks attendant to that, if it were, and I know this is hypothetical, but if it were then the case that it was very clear that the majority of the British people felt that if those were the choices, they'd rather stay in, what do you think the moral responsibility of the government should be in that context?
Well, it's a hypothetical situation which doesn't arrive because actually the clear view of the people as we see, and the opinion polls we see, and the people I speak to, is we've had a democratic debate. Even if I voted Remain as a moderate Remainer, I respect democracy. Can we please get on?
So
with
I get that you don't think it's going to happen, but just indulge me. It's Christmas. It's a parlour game. As a parlour game, if it were to be the case that it was clear that the majority of British people, faced with the choice we're going to have between a hard exit or taking what the EU offers, were to say they didn't want it, what do you think the moral responsibility of the government would be?
I think the moral responsibility is to carry out the will of the people, which was expressed clearly. It's 17.4 million people, and we were told it was a once-in-a-generation decision. It's not like a general election.
Why does the democratic choice of people made 18 months ago trump the democratic choice of people made in 6 months'
Because
time?
we were told it was a once-in-a-generation decision. We were told the will of the people would be carried out. The people have a right to trust the government in a £9 million taxpayer-funded leaflet.
Shibmanik?
Okay, so just sticking to the morality of this rather than the policy, what's too high a price to pay to leave the EU? In your, name a few things that would just be too high a cost. Let's say,
well, I want to leave. I want to leave the EU full stop because I want to get control of our sovereignty, borders. So for me,
with the breakup of the UK,
for me, we're not paying price. We will benefit by leaving the European Union. It's not a question of price. We will benefit.
Well, there are clearly costs to leaving the EU. Right, there's going to be costs.
Hang on, but there's a cost to being a member of the
EU.
Sure,
of course.
Right?
Let's not get into that. I just want to ask you this, which is, with the breakup of the UK, which is a scenario, would that be too high a cost for you?
Well, in my view, it's completely unrelated. The will of Scotland.
We're talking about the morality of this here.
Well,
right?
They're completely separate issues. Don't compare apples with pears.
No,
the Scottish independence referendum was a matter for Scotland.
I'm trying to figure out here whether you're a pure ideologue, and in that sense, look, you just want to leave the EU, and that's the end of it.
Correct.
Right. So, what price are you willing to pay? Are you willing to be violent in your cause?
Of course not, because we live in a peaceful democracy.
Right, so there are some lines that you want to draw. Violence would be one of them.
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else?
Well,
is it just violence? That's where you stop, and that's it.
You talked about price.
So you don't even want to hold another referendum, for example.
Well, I don't believe there's a price. I believe there's a benefit. There will be a huge financial benefit.
Sure.
There will be a democratic benefit. People will feel much more empowered to...
Put it briefly. What are you willing to do to achieve your end?
What we're doing at the moment, which is campaigning peacefully to ensure that the government carries out the will of the people. That's the ambition of Leave Means Leave.
Okay. Richard Tice, thank you.